According to the dictionary, a scientific law is a statement of an observable occurrence in nature that always appears to be true. So why is it important to not only understand, but work with these laws? Well, and this is a fair assumption, I'm guessing that you're breathing air, living on planet Earth, and you still have a heartbeat. And no matter what you do, you can't escape this realm that we live in. Well, there's things you can do, but for as long as you're living here on this plane of existence, there are laws that govern this plane, and it is in your best interest to act in accordance and not fight against these laws that are set in motion. Thankfully, there's a blueprint about how to act in accordance to these laws. Now, me personally, I tried to escape and dodge and avoid different laws, and eventually, no matter what, they'll always make you submit. Everyone must eventually submit to the law of death. And that sounds dark, but it's absolutely true. So no matter what you try to do, the world, the nature of this universe humbles you and you will submit to death. But my goal is to help you guys improve your life while you're here on this earth in order to get the maximum best life possible. So now that you understand the importance of this video, let's dive into law number one. Law number one is all begins and ends inward. If you think of how a baby is born or an animal is born, obviously it starts in the mother's womb with a very small seed or sperm cell that eventually develops and grows, is pushed outward, right? Lives life, matures, develops, reproduces even maybe. And then eventually it withers, shrinks. A lot of people shrink when they get older, and eventually closes in on itself and dies, and thus returns back to its inward state. A lot of animals become very quiet and they kind of keep themselves as they get older and they're about to die. I remember I had a cat one time that was very old. I think she was like 12 or 13 years old. She one day just started to slowly disappear. She started to show up around the neighborhood in different areas. She lost her way home, but she was very inward. She used to be a very social cat, but she started to turn inward and she eventually shrunk back into her own consciousness as well. That's the same thing with humans. A lot of people get dementia, they develop Alzheimer's, or they start to talk to themselves, and they go from these social butterflies to talking to themselves, staying inwardly, and returning back to that inward state, which we all began in. Another example is seeds. You plant a seed in the soil, and over time, through imbibition, it absorbs water, and through this germination process, it sprouts up through the soil, produces a crop, then eventually withers and returns eventually back to where it began, its inwardmost state. Another example of this law is how our thoughts, which are obviously inward, they start in our mind, eventually, whether they're positive, negative, or neutral, I talked about in this conscious mind video, come to expression or vision in our lives based on our habitual thinking patterns. So you're planting the seeds of either positivity, negativity, or no thought at all. And eventually over time, your mind will look for triggers through your reticular activating system and charge those thoughts either positively or negatively, and actually take things that you see from your environment to support or reinforce whatever you've been thinking, which creates in return a habit, a behavior, and a personality trait, which is a lot of times why it's really hard to get someone that's always grouchy out of that grouchy mood, or that depressed person out of that depressed mood, or that positive person out of that positive mood. But either way, these inward thoughts that we've planted in our mind's soil will come to harvest, and we will see them being expressed in the outward world. So this is sort of what it would look like. You'd have your thought here, and then you would see this thought, or you look for it actively in your outer world. And then from there, that would make an impression on your mind that this is how the world is. But this is all based on how you originally thought the world is, and now you're looking for it. And then once you make this impression, it becomes charged, and your reticular activating system looks for these negative or positive things in your surrounding space, in your environment. And then from there, it once again returns back as a thought. And this cycle just continues and continues and continues. Just like a plant that's planted for a long time, it's eventually going to grow strong roots. That's why it's very important that you get to these roots early on by planting positivity motivation, abundance, creativity, happiness, love. Because if you plant seeds of negativity, hatred, doubt, fear, envy, depression, that's going to root and be very hard to break out of that cycle once it comes to harvest, and it returns feeds back into your initial negative thinking. Hopefully that made sense. Either way, we're moving on to law number 2, which is it's always darkest before dawn. And this was originally said by the English theologian Thomas Fuller in the 1650s. So the idea behind this is related to the literal meaning of dawn. Dawn begins when the light first begins to show over the horizon from the sunrise. Therefore, there is the least light before dawn begins, and before dawn is also the longest point since we were last able to visibly see light. In relation to our own lives, this phrase, it's always darkest before dawn, relates in the sense that things always seem to be worse before things begin to improve. And when you've gone to the very bottom in life, all that's left to realize is you can only go up higher from here. You can't go any lower since you're already at the bottom. And life is a very interesting way of, when you're at the bottom, when you've gone through these tests and these trials that life puts you under, if you pass these tests with a happy attitude, an attitude of this is not a loss, this is a lesson I'm learning, you will receive not only wisdom on how to improve certain areas of your life so you don't make the same mistakes, but life will reward you tenfold in maybe a different endeavor that you partake in because of the mental fortitude and grit and the muscle memory exercises that you passed during these trials. Law number 2 is a big one, and it's probably one of my favorites, and I apply this to my life whenever I'm in a rut and I don't want to do something that's required of me to do in order to achieve my life's purpose. And this law is objects in motion tend to stay in motion, while objects at rest tend to stay at rest. This is the simplified version of Newton's first law, and it's so true on so many different levels. So I'm going to break it down for you guys. Let's say that you're starting a very challenging project, but at the end of this project, there's this huge reward for you, a sense of accomplishment. Maybe you can land that job that you've always dreamed of, or you get that grade in the class that you've always dreamed of. Either way, it's a challenging project. You need to knock it out. So you first start off with this project. You're very motivated, and you're actively working towards achieving this goal over time, or achieving this project over time. We've all done this. You get that initial spark of motivation. However, if you encounter obstacles, setbacks, or lack of inspiration or encouragement from others, this can have a detrimental impact on the force that initially drove and inspired you to be motivated towards completing this challenging goal. And because this may disrupt your motivation, it can slow you down to a halt. And just like an object that's at rest needs an external force to continue to push it forward or move it, you may need some encouragement, some motivation from other people, or inspiration to just keep you going down the path of progress towards completing this goal. On the other hand, a couch potato's pretty much going to continue to remain a couch potato and lack motivation because that's all the couch potato has ever done. It's not motivated. It sits there and it's comfortable being complacent. And to relate that back to the law, it's at a continued state of rest. And it will continue to stay in this state of rest until it's acted upon by an external force, such as deadlines, consequences, or some other form of external pressures that actually matters to the person that's being a couch potato. So in order to get a better understanding of how this law works in action, I just felt like, it was my off day, I'm scootering around, I wanted to show you guys an example of how this would work in relation to my own personal life and things that I like to do in my free time. So me getting on this scooter is me deciding in my mind to work towards a challenging project. And the boost or the push off of the cement with my foot is the initial motivation and the external force of me pursuing this goal and the initial boost of energy and happiness and motivation I feel of accomplishing this. But over time, the friction going in the opposite direction of where my scooter wheels are going is going to slow me down and eventually leave me to a complete stop. And these are just like the speed bumps you'll encounter during your self-improvement journey, like obstacles, setbacks, or lack of support. And this can actually slow you down to a complete halt, as you see me doing here. And I'll be stuck once again in this state unless I decide to use an external force like my foot again, pushing down into the cement to boost me going forward on my scooter. So that's sort of like an outside encouraging force of inspiration, support from my friends, or encouragement from other people, or encouraging myself even to continue to make progress on my goal. And the trick to this, just like riding a scooter, is you want to continue to push and use external force to move you towards your goal. Law number 4, morning and nighttime routines are the most important parts of your day. As I talked about in my morning rituals video, the morning is essential because it sets the tone and the mood for the rest of your day. Obviously, the first things you do when you get up is going to leave a positive or a negative impression on your mind, which will trickle down into your attitude for the rest of the day. That's why it's important to begin your day accomplishing something as easy as just making your bed. If you want to watch that video on morning routines, I'll leave that up right here. You guys can click on that after the video. But just and equally, if not more important, is your nighttime routine. And I didn't talk about this, but if you guys want to see a video on my nighttime routine and effective strategies and tips that I use in order to maximize my nighttime routine so I can have an effective day the next day, please let me know in the comment section below. Now, the nighttime routine is extremely important because it preps your morning routine. An analogy I like to think of in terms of how important it is to get your mindset straight before you go to bed and think about positivity and happiness is, I want you guys to think about dirty dishes. Let's say you made dinner and there's dirty dishes now that are stacked up in the sink, but you know what? You feel like going to bed instead. This is sort of like going to bed on a bad thought, or leaving something that you should have cleaned up that day and taking it with you to sleep and sleeping on it. So basically what I'm trying to say is, just like old food would harden to a pan and stick to it, be really hard to get off if you left it sitting in the sink over the next night, you have to treat your mindset the same way. If there's anything that's lingering on your mind, like a dirty dish, you don't want to take that towards the next day and not clean it the night before you go to bed, because then it's going to be extra hard to scrub the next day all day long and use the energy you could be using towards your purpose that day towards something that happened in the past and you didn't clean up. Hopefully that made sense to you. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you're interested in more content like this and you want to see the part 2, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you guys think about videos like this so I can consider making more of them in the future, if it was helpful, if it wasn't helpful. And drop a like if you enjoyed it and you want to see more videos like this. If you want to stick around for more self-improvement content, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notification so you don't miss another video. Love you guys. Apply these to your life. Work with the laws of the universe instead of against them. Stay blessed.